Hello and welcome. My name is. I wanted to give just a short workbook to people that wanted it to say, look, there's ways around this. There's other ways of thinking about this, and I just I can post about that all day long. I can have one-on-one calls with people all day long, but I wanted to figure out how to get it into the masses. And then I thought, a little while back, I thought, I haven't ever done a LinkedIn Live before, but maybe that would be a good delivery platform for this content too, because I know different people resonate with different platforms, and some people are visual, some people are audio. Um, but now it's going to be in video format as well. So hopefully that'll just make it that much more helpful for people. Um, and the idea is, if you're sending resumes out and that's all you're doing, that gives you a sense of completion, but when you haven't really completed anything. And I think that this is an attempt on my behalf to help you take back control of your professional future, because one of the worst things that can happen to you when you're displaced, or you're not happy with your work, or your boss is an asshole, or whatever, you're not making enough money, whatever the reason is that you're looking around, when you start to look and you get no response, you feel like everything's beyond your control. And so again, contextually, this is a way for me to hopefully give you back at least a little bit of control over your professional future. And so that brings us to LinkedIn. We're going to do probably another 5 or 10 minutes of content, and then I'm going to open it up to questions in a kind of unique fashion. What I find when I talk to people and when I look on LinkedIn, and I spend every day on LinkedIn, not all day, but every day. So I'm very aware of how people use LinkedIn by looking at their profiles and talking people through it. And I think it's probably in the area of about 25%. I don't have any data to support that, but I think it's in the area of 25% is the percentage to which people actually use LinkedIn. So there's a lot of opportunity there. And some of you may not be familiar with LinkedIn at all. Some of you maybe are very familiar with it, but I think all of you have opportunities, and hopefully some of those opportunities will get flushed out over the course of the next 20 minutes or so. So I wrote for the same reason, a couple of years ago, I wrote a workbook called LinkedIn Cheat Sheet. And if you go to my website, it's free. If you go to my website, markaylward.com, you should see my name spelled at the bottom of the video here. There's a tab on the menu bar that says LinkedIn Cheat Sheet. And if you click that, there is an opt-in. So if you don't want to give me your email address, then you can't get as easily access to the workbook, but I could figure out a way to get it to you otherwise if you wanted to reach out after this is over. But just go there and download the workbook. It's probably, I think it's 11 pages, so it's pretty easy to get through. Caveat would be that I wrote it a few years ago, so some of the user interface things might be different. LinkedIn does change their interface often as they do their algorithm, which I don't profess to understand. That's some other expert out there. But all the topics are correct. All the content is correct. Just an example. I mean, I think they used to call LinkedIn groups, and I think they call them interests now. But LinkedIn's set up pretty well, and they have some excellent help videos and training videos. So this isn't going to be about the details, the nuts and bolts of how to use LinkedIn. It's going to be conceptual. But if you take these concepts and you go into LinkedIn and you learn how to implement them, and if I can implement them, anyone can, because I'm not technical at all. But go check out that LinkedIn cheat sheet, and it'll take the information you're getting here, and it'll take it, it'll give it more context, more breadth, more width, more depth. And if you just do that, I think you'll benefit tremendously from the use of the tool. And then it comes down to just spending a little consistent time in there. So let's talk about groups a little bit. I think groups are, the idea is to join them, and to join them after you polish up your profile, however you want to do that, with my advice, with the workbook, through somebody else, whatever you want to do. But the idea is people join groups on LinkedIn that don't necessarily have to do with their profession. And what I mean by that is, I'm going to use IT because that's my space. I'm an IT project manager, or I'm a CIO, or I'm an application developer, or an architect of some kind. But I also like motorcycles, or I also drink coffee, or I also like sailing. You pick a hobby, golf, pick a hobby that all of those hobbies that I just named off there, people that do that, they're passionate about it, most of them in my experience. So the notion is to polish up your profile and then go out to the groups and look through all the listings of groups. The only rule of thumb that I would say, I think you can join like 50 of them. It might even be more like 100. And you might not want that many. You might want 10 or 5 or 20. That's up to you. But the approach is, if these people are in the Boston coffee consumers or coffee lovers group, then you can reach out to any of those people and connect with them without charge, no in-mail cost at all, because you're in the same group. And you can start the conversation about coffee or sailing or motorcycles or soccer or whatever. And genuinely ask, we have two things in common. I play in the IT world and I love soccer, and it seems like you do too. Let's connect. So the idea is to connect with people on a common ground that has nothing to do with what your primary purpose might be, because those conversations are much easier to have. They're much more authentic. And, when you get somebody talking about something that they're passionate about, it's pretty easy over a period of maybe 2 or 3 conversations or 2 or 3 emails or in-mails to eventually say, hey, look, just so you know, I'm also interested in pursuing opportunities in this particular space. And it looks like that's a space that you're well versed in, or you play in. And I wonder if we could talk about that. I could use your advice. And if you start to understand where I'm going with this stream of logic, you can see that you're going from a really soft introduction into a topic that you both are admittedly passionate about, or you wouldn't belong to that LinkedIn group. And then over the course of 2 or 3 follow-ups, you can open up the conversation and position it in such a way that you're asking for advice as opposed to a favor. So if you don't get that, you can certainly reach out to me, and I'm happy to dive much deeper into that. But that's the idea behind groups. So, and the last piece about groups I would say would be, I would not join a group if it didn't have a minimum number of members. And once you start playing around in groups on LinkedIn, you'll get a clear understanding of what that number might be. I would say lowest I would consider would be 1,000. And depending on how many big groups you can find, you might raise the bar up to maybe 10,000. Because if there's 10,000 people in a group, chances are you're going to be able to get in touch with a handful of those people that are going to be able to help you over a period of time. So that's how I would recommend that you use groups. And that's also the way to reach out to strangers on LinkedIn. I tell you, I must get at least one a day, sometimes more, people wanting to connect with me. And I look at what they do, and they clearly want to sell me something. And they're not saying hello for any other reason. They pitch their service or product in the introductory touch. I don't know about anyone else out there that's in a position similar to mine, but I don't entertain any of those. I entertain 1% of those, maybe 5%. Some people have the ability to contextualize that cold outreach in such a fashion that it just piques my curiosity, but 99% of them don't, because it's offensive, in my opinion, to lead with an ask. You don't lead with an ask. You lead with a hello, how are you? I found your profile fascinating for these reasons. And it looks like we have a lot in common. I'd love to dig in a little bit if you have a few minutes. So let me know if you'd like to connect, and then let me know if it makes sense to get on the phone and say hello. And you have to develop a cadence with that. You have to develop a timing with that. Some people can lean into that on a second touch. Most people are going to take probably about 4. On that 4th touch, you start to move the ball a little bit into an ask. But it's asking for advice as opposed to, you want to spend money on my stuff. I don't understand why people do that. It must work in some capacity. Maybe most of it's bots and automated stuff going on. I don't know. I don't care. My advice to you is, if you're going to reach out to people on LinkedIn, do it softly, do it kindly, have something of interest for the person you're reaching out to. Make an observation that's accurate because you did a little research, you looked into stuff. Maybe they just wrote an article. Maybe they just got an award. Maybe they just got a promotion. There's a litany of possibilities in a situation like that. So when you're reaching out to people that you don't know for purposes, or selfish purposes, for lack of a better phrase, don't lead with an ask. Just I can't stress that enough. So that's go get the workbook. I think the workbook will open up your eyes, and it's really, really simple stuff. It's a few hours worth of work if you choose to do the work in the workbook, but it's worth it. And if you don't think your profile is good enough, you're not using it enough, whatever the case might be, go get the workbook. It'll help you. So I thought what we do in terms of Q&A, I got a couple of questions, and they're inside the content that I looked up some of the content, because I've been answering questions about LinkedIn for 15 years, 10 years minimum. And so they're common themes that people are curious about. So what I thought I'd do, because none of these questions are not inside the body of information I put together. So just some helpful tips. I'm going to turn the Q&A into helpful tips. And I hope that works for you. Probably 10 minutes. So I think it's important when you start to use LinkedIn to understand what you want to use it for, how you want to use it. Some people use it to look for work. Some people are just interested in branding themselves. Some people are interested in a platform for their thought leadership content. Some people are looking to sell services and products. Most of the stuff that I shared with you works in all of those areas. It's beneficial in all of those areas, but understand what you're using it for, because I will tell you, and you may know this, for lack of a better phrase, it's a situation where if you don't know what you're using it for, then you're probably not going to be pointing things in the right direction. So make that decision first. If you know what keywords are and hashtags are, I would hope that all of you do. It's 2024, but LinkedIn is very sensitive to those. So whenever I talk about keywords, I always want to make the statement that don't ever sacrifice grammar or content to stuff keywords into things just to get eyes, because it's obvious kind of fraudulent approach. But it is the profiles and the platform are very sensitive to keywords. So you might want to consider developing a set of keywords depending on your purpose and a set of hashtags, and just keep them handy when you're writing content or you're commenting on posts or you're creating any content of any kind, even video content. They add juice. They'll attract eyes. If you do commit to playing on the platform daily, even if it's just for 5, 10, 15 minutes, and I would suggest you do if you're actively looking to accomplish something in that space, liking things is good, but helpful and insightful comments are better. And I learned this some time ago. What I do when I go through and I look for posts where I can add value, or I'm interested in responding or complimenting someone in an authentic and a genuine way, it's very helpful to add comments. Liking, making you laugh, those things are good. It's better than nothing. But if you can bring a relevant, helpful response to a comment, that'll get you some juice as well. And if I was going to do LinkedIn just on a small time scale, that's what I'd do. I'd go on for maybe 10 or 15 minutes a day, every day, and I would just scroll and look for posts where it's like, I find that very interesting, or I could add some helpful context to that. So let me think through it for a second and just get off in 15 minutes and you're done for the day. If you're going to do work on LinkedIn, particularly if you're going to post or write articles, I really recommend that you're consistent. So I'm on there every day. I'm commenting and posting pretty much every day. I write articles a little less frequently, maybe once or twice a month, but I try not to miss a month if I'm writing articles. And I try not to miss a day of commenting on posts, because consistency is rewarded. LinkedIn rewards consistency. I also think, in the spirit of demonstrating your capability as opposed to just presenting it on a piece of paper, you might have some work. Like if you're an artist, you might have some sketches or some painting. If you're a programmer, you might have some code samples. You might have some links to work. Um, but there are plenty of areas on your LinkedIn profile where you can upload your work, PDFs, videos, what have you. And I don't see many people doing a lot of that at all. It's a select group of people that does a lot of it, and then everyone else does very little of it. So I would definitely encourage you to upload your work, and you can figure out how to do that. Um, I One of the things that I've been committing to for quite some time now is this concept of authenticity, my personality. I commented, I think, in another one of the videos about creating content, and it's, I was raised to be polite. I was raised to be respectful. I was raised to be proper. And when I was in school, they taught you how to write that way. Well, that doesn't entertain people. That doesn't attract people. That doesn't get people to take action. So I had this long learning curve where it was like, I was a very good writer when you're talking about writing papers for school, right? I would get A's. But when I started writing online and I read it back out loud to myself, I thought, that's really bland. That's actually kind of boring. It's correct grammatically and contextually, but it's not, there's no buzz there. So I went through this kind of self-awareness exercise and I started working on my authenticity. I write that word down every morning to focus. I write down authenticity and consistency, because it's not just LinkedIn. Those two things are money everywhere. And I'm trying, and maybe you can reply and comment on some of my stuff if you're so inclined, and say, yeah, no, that's bolder, that's better, it's more interesting, it's funny, it's sarcastic, it's ironic. So those are the things in my experience that attract people to your profile. Those are the things that get people to say, I want to know more. So add some personality to your profile. Don't be afraid of that. It's almost counterintuitive. um like I said before, if you like to write, just start writing, and you might consider also creating a newsletter for yourself. I happened upon this when I was writing, and I don't even remember when it happened, but I do a podcast with a friend of mine called the Imperfect Men's Club. And I went into my LinkedIn profile and I dropped down and selected write an article. And I think it was a drop down menu after that presented itself. Do you want to write a newsletter on behalf of the Imperfect Men's Club, or do you want to just write an article? And I clicked on Imperfect Men's Club. That was probably 4 or 5 months ago. I have over 500 subscribers now. And quite honestly, I don't know how that works, but I know that a newsletter is now, I have an audience of 500 people that I can send a message to that have a collective interest in one of my works. And there's power there. And I have yet to tap into that, but I'm going to, because I'm involved in that with a partner of mine, a buddy of mine, and I want to make sure that he and I are both benefiting from whatever it is we choose to do. But I built that audience by mistake, and I'm sharing it with you just so you investigate. If you like to write, investigate the newsletter and see how you can make that work to your advantage. And I guess one of the last things that I'll say is use recommendations. Recommendations are all the way at the bottom, and I haven't asked anybody to write one for me in a while. I got one from a former mentor and boss of mine, but he did it voluntarily. I didn't ask him to. But I believe, as I recall, the mechanism is what I tell people to do is go into the tool. And when you're asking someone for a recommendation, and you'll have to figure out how to do that, it's just a logistical user interface thing. I tell people, create exactly what you would like them to say about you. And what I mean by that is not, plagiarism or anything, or fabrication. It's like, if you've worked with them, if you know them well enough to ask them for a recommendation, then how they feel about your work in what capacity. And you probably know they probably know what your strengths are. So create what you would like them to say, email it to them, or send it to them through LinkedIn. I believe you can do that, and say, hey, I really would like a recommendation. And I crafted one up because I know you're busy, and you can edit the shit out of this, or you can use it as is. But I want your name on it. And so you have poetic license to do whatever you want. But I thought, if I create this for you, then all it takes you is like 5 seconds to click a button. And if I don't create it for you, life's going to get in the way and I might not ever get it back. Good intentions in mind. So that's what I do. And then I always say, certainly let me turn around and return the favor. So you return the favor and you craft the recommendation. Most people, I think I have 19 or 20 of them up there now. And most people accept my draft because they want to do me the favor, but they don't want additional work, which is just human nature, right? So I would use recommendations very, very aggressively. And the last thing I'll say about recommendations is mediocre is bad. So you want authenticity, but you want words like excellent or expert or, transformational. I think one of my recommendations, my experience was with Mark, was transformational. Those are powerful phrases. But if you say, he does really good work, I wouldn't post that. I wouldn't put that on my profile, because again, you have to kind of think of the consumer of this information. There's a happy medium between superlatives and authenticity, right? You don't want to go overboard, but you don't want there to be any hesitation that Mark is one of the best at this that I've ever worked with, whatever this is. And so that's the way to use recommendations. And I would do all that stuff. So I think that that's kind of the tail end of the content. I hope you got some actionable things to do out of there. I feel like I gave you some, whether they're relevant to you or germane to your circumstances right now. I certainly don't know, but I think LinkedIn's a very powerful tool. I think the last time I looked, they have over 700 million users. It's my go-to social media platform. I don't play anywhere else. I used to play on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. I don't play there anymore because I'm in the professional advice space. I'm in the leadership space. And LinkedIn, I think, is the best platform for that. Doesn't mean you can't go elsewhere. I mean, more is better as long as it's good, but it's a lot of work juggling multiple platforms. And just a throwaway comment, because I see this and I don't understand why. The two pictures that you're allowed to use at the top, one is your picture. Have a smile on your face, have a collared shirt on, whatever. And then the banner, that's a lot of space and people throw that away. And I used to throw it away. I had big, nice pictures of the Notre Dame campus because that's where I went to school. I used to have Boston Harbor pictures up there, but you can figure out a way to use that more like advertising. Like, what do you do? What do you want people to know about you? Boom. It's the first thing you see in the banner. I wouldn't make political statements with that unless you're pushing politics, unless you have a political agenda. I would figure out a way to use that big piece of landscape there and not throw it away to a pretty picture. Pretty picture is not going to hurt you, but you're throwing away an opportunity, in my opinion. And that just popped into my head. I thought I'd share that. So again, I hope that was helpful. Go to markaylward.com. And there are two things you can do there. If you want to talk to me, I offer a 30-minute free consultation where we figure out if I can help you, and if I determine that I can, how I can help you. And if we don't agree to work together, that's fine. I'll leave you with at least a couple of tips that I think you can take action on as soon as the conversation's over. And then the other thing is go grab that LinkedIn cheat sheet that's on the menu. All right. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope it was helpful. I'm doing another one of these next week, Tuesday at 3 p.m. I think we've got 3 more to go. And then I'll be thinking about my next series. All right. Have a great day. Thanks.